Today we're going to talk about choosing the best data analysis method for your research. Look at is how do we choose a method? What are the steps? In picking a research methodology is to identify your research design. Once you've identified your research design, then you want to determine what type of data you are going to collect. Then you'll look through the assumptions for each test, identify your sample type, and then determine the number of groups. Step is to identify your research design. We have causal comparative and experimental. Then below that, you'll see we have correlational and experimental. The difference between these two is causal comparative and experimental are looking at a difference between your groups, where correlational and sometimes experimental are really looking at the relationship between the groups. So for differences, I'm looking at group A students versus group B students, whereas with the relationship, I'm looking at something like how are your fall GPA and the number of hours you spend studying per week related. Is to determine what type of data you're going to collect. So if we're looking at ratio or interval data, well, ratio values are ranked in order, but also have a true 0 point. Interval values are also ranked in order, but those values have to represent equal intervals. Some ratio examples are height, weight, time, and speed. Some interval examples are aptitude and attitude test scores. Ordinal data are values that are classified and also ranked according to some criteria. Some examples are class rank and student achievement. The last type of data is nominal data. This is also called categorical data, and these values include 2 or more named categories. Some examples are Northerners versus Southerners, Republicans versus Democrats, and males versus females. To look at is how is our data set up. So paired data or paired groups or paired variables are a comparison between two related samples, and unpaired are comparisons between two unrelated or independent samples. To look at are the number of groups. And so any more than 2 groups might lead you down a different path, which will lead to selecting a different test. Dive into all the different types of data analysis. Statistical tests are what we're going to look at. The first one is the paired t-test. Test is great if you're using the research design of experimental or causal comparative. It's a great test to use if you're using 1 or 2 groups. It's also great if you have ratio or interval data and your sample type is paired. Some potential research questions are, does the implementation of a flipped classroom approach lead to significant improvements in student engagement levels over the course of a semester? Are there significant differences in pre- and post-test scores of reading comprehension skills among elementary school students who receive one-on-one tutoring sessions? And does participation in a mindfulness-based stress reduction program lead to a significant reduction in perceived stress levels among high school students before and after the intervention? Look at is the unpaired t-test. T-test is the data analysis method that you'll use if you're using experimental or causal comparative research. You have 1 or 2 groups. The type of data that you're using is ratio or interval, and the sample type is unpaired. Some examples of some research questions are, is there a significant difference in mathematics achievement scores between students who participate in traditional lecture-based teaching approach versus those who engage in a problem-based learning method? Do students who receive feedback through audio comments on their assignments demonstrate significantly higher levels of writing improvement compared to students who receive written feedback? Is there a significant disparity in the academic performance of students from urban schools versus students from rural schools in standardized testing? Review is the one-way ANOVA. Is used in experimental or causal comparative research. You use this when you have more than 2 groups. If your type of data is ratio or interval, and the sample type is paired. Some examples of some research questions are, is there a significant variation in the effectiveness of 3 different professional development programs for teachers in improving their classroom management skills? Do students from different socioeconomic backgrounds exhibit varying levels of self-efficacy in science education? Are there significant differences in academic performance among students taught by using 3 different teaching methods: traditional, lecture-based, inquiry-based learning, and cooperative learning? Review is the two-way ANOVA. When you have an experimental or causal comparative research design, when you have more than 2 groups, the type of data is ratio or interval, and the sample type is unpaired. Some examples of research questions are, is there a significant interaction between teacher experience levels and teaching strategies on student satisfaction with course material? How do student gender and type of assignment interact to influence academic performance in mathematics? Do different teaching methods and classroom sizes have significant interactions on student engagement levels? That we'll review is the Wilcoxon sign rank. This type of test is used if you're using a research design of experimental or causal comparative. You have 1 or 2 groups, your data type is ordinal, and the sample type is paired. Some examples and research questions are, does participation in a peer tutoring program result in a significant improvement in mathematics achievement for middle school students? Are there significant differences in reading comprehension scores before and after a reading intervention program for elementary students with learning disabilities? Does a mindfulness meditation intervention lead to a significant decrease in anxiety levels among high school students? Mann-Whitney. The Wilcoxon-Mann-Whitney is useful when you have an experimental or causal comparative research design, when you have 1 or 2 groups, when your data type is ordinal, and the sample type is unpaired. Some examples of research questions are, is there a significant difference in the effectiveness of 2 different intervention programs for improving reading fluency among elementary school students from low-income backgrounds? Do students who attend public schools exhibit significantly different levels of motivation compared to students who attend private schools? Are there significant differences in critical thinking skills between students who participate in project-based learning approach versus those who engage in traditional lecture-based instruction? McNemar. The McNemar is good if you're using experimental or causal comparative or correlational research. It's good if we have 1 or 2 groups, the type of data is nominal, and the sample type is paired. Some examples of some research questions are, do students who receive additional support through peer tutoring program show significant improvements in their academic performance compared to those who do not receive such support? Are there significant changes in students' attitudes towards STEM subjects after participating in extracurricular STEM enrichment program? Does the implementation of a new teaching method lead to a significant change in the number of students who pass a standardized mathematics test compared to the traditional teaching method? Chi-square. The chi-square is used with experimental or causal comparative or correlational research. It's used if you have 1 or 2 groups, if the data type is nominal and the sample type is unpaired. Some examples of some research questions are, is there a significant relationship between parental involvement and academic achievement levels among elementary school students? Are there significant differences in the distribution of preferred learning styles among high school students across different grade levels? Is there a significant association between teaching methods and student satisfaction levels in a college physics course? Pearson's R. Pearson's R is used with correlational research. It's when you have 1 or 2 groups and the type of data is ratio or interval. Some questions that you can use on your research are, is there a significant association between the amount of time spent on homework per week and standardized test scores in a high school English language arts course? What is the strength of the relationship between teacher efficacy beliefs and student motivation levels in a middle school science classroom? Is there a significant correlation between student attendance rates and academic performance in a high school mathematics course? The Spearman row is used with correlational research. The number of groups are 1 or 2, and the type of data is ordinal. Some examples of some research questions you can use are, is there a significant association between parental involvement levels and student perceptions of school climate in a diverse urban high school? What is the strength of the relationship between teacher-student rapport and classroom engagement levels in a middle school social studies classroom? Is there a significant relationship between students' self-reported levels of intrinsic motivation and their academic achievement in a high school biology course? Methodology. The research design might be narrative, ethnography, or case study, or many others. The type of data is nominal. The methods that you might use are survey, observation, field notes, interviews, and more. Some examples of some research questions are, what are the lived experiences and perceptions of high school students who have transitioned from traditional classroom learning to full-time virtual education during the COVID-19 pandemic? How do cultural norms and societal expectations influence the learning experiences and academic trajectories of immigrant students in a multicultural high school setting? What are the key factors influencing the successful implementation of project-based learning in a rural elementary setting? This video provided an overview of the different statistical tests that you can use in your research analysis. If you would like more information on which ones to select, how to select them, please go down and click on the tool selector quiz to help guide you to that answer. Thank you.